Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very simple question for side proposition. If this corruption among the elites and those in politics is as rampant as it is, and at the same time they try to cater to the urban poor as a stakeholder, the question I have is, won't that make things worse for these individuals? Because you have to nuance this to this idea of proportionality, which I don't think that they were able to do. Meaning, the very rich individuals who don't give a shit because they don't use their own government benefits and services because they have access to private healthcare, private education, are able to get away scot-free. And those people, we agree with you, is the tipping point in this debate, those urban poor and middle class, are the very people who from the get-go don't have a big taxable income, who as a consequence get less benefits that in and of itself is particularly harmful. This is a value judgment debate about the tipping point of the middle class and lower income individuals who legitimately depend on these particular government benefits, like that including but not limited to Pag-ibig, SSS, PhilHealth, access to things like loans and even pension later on when you're able to no longer be employed, as something to make their quality of life better. And the main question in which I challenge the lens of how they see this debate is, if these very people from the beginning live on a day-to-day subsistence and in no way are going to be able to have as much money as a political elite or someone earning 6, 7, 8 figures a year, these are the very people who get disproportionately harmed. I think it's particularly the case for a couple of reasons. But before I move on to that, a few key points of framing. The first is, let's take a look at basic accounting of how it works. The way you're able to compute for what is taxed is simply revenue or money coming in minus expenses or money coming out. That equates to your taxable income. Meaning, let's take a look at a scenario analysis. The rich and wealthy individuals who already have a higher revenue for reasons that they can be, they were born with a silver spoon, or they did shady stuff and go into illegal things, or even what the previous speaker said, they're able to cut certain corners, just on average have a higher taxable income. 20% of 500,000 per month is way more than 20% of 20K or something you get for minimum wage. Meaning, the math doesn't math. The impact is a conditional harm to the very people who quantitatively need it, but at the same time, quantitatively don't have as much taxable income. But here's the kicker. People are affected in the same way, meaning cancer, heart disease, stroke, which are the major killers, affect you the same way, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're from the north, from the south. And these are realities we have to contend with. Because if you can't afford going to Makati Medical Center, you can't afford to going to St. Luke's, or you can't afford to go to a private institution, which on average is better in terms of quality, you are at the mercy of government services. And as a consequence, the very individual jeepney drivers or tricycle drivers or urban poor who disproportionately, because of their living condition, get wrecked by these things, they're the very people who don't have access to those things at the point in which they need it. The math simply doesn't math. The second is, let's take a look at the nature of this particular individuals. Meaning, whether you're rich, middle class, or poor, you for real want to be able to lower your taxable income. That's why sometimes people bloat their expenses. They do certain accounting tricks to be able to lower that. The rich can even put a lot of their money in things like Swiss bank accounts or tax havens like the Cayman Island to be able to protect it. The middle class, like myself, we can do certain tricks with our accountant to be able to bloat our expenses or understate our particular income. That's not illegal. It's just something na dinidiskartehan. Meaning, for instance, in order to lower your taxable income from 20 down to 10 down to 5%, you just need to be able to submit a sworn statement along with your income tax return or ITR with a certificate of registration to the BIR showing that you're from this particular tax bracket. What am I trying to say? I'm saying that regardless of you being rich or middle class, you have an incentive to want to be able to lower taxes. What's the harm? The harm there is that there's a converse effect on your ability to have hyperbolic discounting, meaning you're so concerned with your short-term cash flow that you aren't able to think long-term about your education, your pension, and your ability to be able to protect yourself with healthcare at the point in which these things aren't necessarily proximate to you. Meaning, because everyone deals with the reality today, May 31, 2025, we don't necessarily think long-term about what's going to happen, which exactly is the point of these government benefits and services to be able to protect them. Now let's take a look at the poor individuals, right? Because my question to them, which is a POI they didn't take, is if you're an individual who pays no taxes or very little taxes, does that mean you're going to get no benefit or little to no benefit? If the answer is yes, that unlocks the harms of what I'm positing, because these very people are the ones who are going to be disproportionately wrecked. The path to victory thus far that I've explained are a couple of things. Number one, the nature of taxation and how people necessarily want to lower it, which leads to hyperbolic discounting and thinking in short term that harms them later on in life. The second is, who exactly needs government benefits? And the very people who actually need and use it, who are the urban poor and the middle class, get disproportionately wrecked. Because the rich people, who we agree with them, maybe steal, maybe do shady stuff, don't even use government services. They have their Ivy League schools, they have their private healthcare. They are the ones with the most to be able to gain, but the least to lose. Conversely, the urban poor and middle class get disproportionately wrecked. Lastly is on this idea of what the tipping point is. The tipping point in this debate, I agree with them, are the middle class and the urban poor. At best, what side proposition has said thus far is a bunch of random stuff about like tax auditing and making sure we do it well. That's not really the debate we're having. A lot of what they're saying isn't really in contention. They have to nuance this more to proportionality and uniquely explain what these benefits are, who they cater to, and how exactly they're going to be able to help the urban poor if they claim it to be so important to them. For all of these reasons, we are very proud to stand on side negative.
Thank you for that one.